What is the most bullshit reason for a teacher to give you a bad grade? We had weekly speaking tests in my 11th grade English class, which I thought was a bit remedial by that point and probably said so in a not completely diplomatic way. The teacher even made you write any words you got wrong 5 times and hand that in to her by 10 of the class. I would typically get perfect scores on them, but at one time I got a test back with no actual errors marked as a 0%. My teacher's explanation was she saw me talking to someone in our free period before class who ended up doing poorly and that was my fault because I distracted him from possibly studying. What? How does this make literally any sense? Teachers are not always as impartial as people in that position should be. Bad days and personal grudges are often a culprit for an unfair grade or detention. Wrote in Chicago format and lost points. The assignment instructions said to write in Chicago format. Edit. To anyone curious, I did try and point this out. Basically still lost points, but they upped the final grade. Extra edit. Lot of questions on Chicago. Here's a brief overview. https://owl. Purdue, edu, owl, research _and citation, Chicago manual 17th edition, CMOS formatting and style guide, general faux. RMAT. HTML. It's common in social studies, history courses in my experience. Basically, when thinking Chicago, think, oh, the footnote 1. This reminds me of an assignment in which lost marks for not double-spacing my work. I did double-space my work back before I learned that double-spacing meant 2 space between lines. I thought it meant between words. No one ever told little old me, and that just made sense to me. A space goes between 2 words, so a double-space paper must have 2 between them. Because he didn't read my paper. It was a university class where Atar was responsible for grading the papers. He was clearly overwhelmed and just reading introductions and grading based on him alone. I had a 2-part introduction that fully addressed the prompt. But as he only read the first part, 1 got my paper back with a big C at the top. I ended up getting full credit after I challenged the initial grade. Glad you had a better result. My first large college paper freshman year came back with a giant red D written on it with practically no feedback. I was in a writing program and I had always excelled at essays, so I was sort of shocked. Went to the professor and asked him about the grade and lack of instruction. He sighed, looked down and said, Westhoff. I don't like quote. He went on and on after that with some bullshit reasons. But apparently the big issue came from the first week of class. He was talking about manifest destiny and said something like, now you have to remember, back in those days there were 50 to 100 miles between towns out in the western USA. And I raised my hand and said that there was still 50 to 100 miles between towns in the western US. He said I was exaggerating and I told him I wasn't because that's where I grew up. That paper was 40% of our grade. He refused to change the grade or even reread it. I scraped a C+ in that class and I was so fucking proud of that grade, even though it was the worst grade I received in my life. At the end of the semester, I decided to ask him for his grading documentation to see if I could challenge the paper with the school, but he claimed he had already thrown it away. I found out later that was bullshit too, but I didn't press any further. You should have pressed, at the very least, so he doesn't try that bullshit with someone else. I was taking a 1-week online class in the syllabus. The teacher said you must post 6 times throughout the week. So, I posted 6x on Monday, 1x on Wednesday and felt I was good to go. I get my grade, teacher comments, and the teacher wrote *Kayano 905. You had some good posts early in the week. But then you stopped posting. so I had to mark you down. Asterisk. I was annoyed by this, but then realized it was the last online course in the program, and frankly, I didn't care. I still graduated, and that certificate is, proudly, sitting in my junk drawer for all to see. Taking online courses now, and the rule in almost every single class seems to be, 1. Post and comment on 2 of your classmates' posts. Every week it's the same posts. And Lieutenant, topic and GT, is really interesting and important. I really learned a lot, especially about and Lieutenant, quote from lecture slide and GT. Then a few responses saying, I really agree. And Lieutenant, topic and GT, really is important in today's industry. It's so frustrating because they are trying to force discussion and the questions really aren't the best for discussions. It's like, discussion topic, is 1 + 1 = 2. Shit. Now I've got to figure out how to stretch the answer yes into a whole paragraph of why 1 + 1 = 2 then. I've got to get 2 paragraph replies to classmates which can't just say I agree. I didn't like a movie that was supposed to be her favorite. She would do stuff like this to other students as well. Complaints were made, but I graduated before I saw where it lead. It insists upon itself. My 7th grade gym teacher gave me a D because I hardly ever smiled. My life sucked at that time. You seem like an unhappy kid. Let me give you something else to be unhappy about because of it. A friend of mine got a -1 for scratching his head. Our teacher said he was faking it. I guess that teacher had too many bad experiences with women who faked head scratches. Fake head scratches are a real problem in our society, and they're probably what causes hurricanes. Got points off because of the bad grammar in the quote I used. The quote was Oppenheimer's, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. I'm more shocked that they didn't recognize the quote. Staples were not in the right spot for my essay even though I had them in the top left corner. Like always. That's when you know the teacher doesn't like you and is literally looking for petty reasons to take points off. My friend failed French because she had a French accent, and the teacher couldn't understand her French because she was American. My friend had spoke French since she was 4, took Spanish class in high school. Half the class was either born in Mexico or first-generation American with Mexican parents. But apparently Mexican Spanish isn't real Spanish and would make them down for having accents. Our Spanish teacher was fired after he failed the whole class, including his born and raised for the first 10 years of her life in Mexico daughter. In the 90s my family didn't have a computer and I had no access to one. I spent a lot of time on a handwritten assignment for school and the teacher gave me a B. Writing as a comment. I would have given you an A if you had typed it up on a computer. I knew a girl in the early 2000s who used a typewriter because she didn't have a printer or a floppy disk reader in her computer. Back then in school we were offered an optional class to learn 10-finger typing. It would be done on typewriters in the school, but we would also get homework assignments. My parents didn't have a typewriter or a computer, so I signed up for that course hoping I could talk my parents into getting a computer. Of course they got a typewriter instead. At the end of the class one was the only one who didn't get the best possible grade, because my homework assignments would have typos in them this year. The rest of the children had computers at home and would use Word with autocorrect to type out the assignments. So everyone besides me got full points on all assignments. I have no idea how the teacher didn't notice this, but I was not one to tell on others. My teacher lost my coursework on the bus home. I refused to redo a year's worth of work in 3 weeks and I got taken from an A to a C. Bullshit. School sided with him. A C. What kind of school allows a teacher to admit they lost coursework and have the school go, oh well, student's fault, minus points? That makes no sense to me. This happened at my secondary school as well. The teacher won't admit to losing the work and then it becomes you versus them on if you actually submitted it, or they lost it. I've never seen a student win this argument. She gave me a 0 because she didn't think I read the book. She said I would have gotten a 75% if she thought I read it. 75% of the test questions right supposedly means I didn't actually do the reading. Still one of those things that pisses me off even 10 years later. Why wouldn't you give her a verbal synopsis of the book when she said you didn't read it? Because they didn't read it, clearly edit, comma. 4th grade, the day before Thanksgiving break. There was no work to be done of course, so we had a busy work art assignment. We were all handed graph paper and told to color each of the squares either yellow, orange, red, or brown. And once we finished, we were supposed to cut out corn shapes to make Indian corn decorations. I already thought this WAA stupid, and filling in all the squares was tedious. So I traced the corn shape on the graph paper and only filled in the squares that would end up as part of the final product. This meant my decorations looked the same as all the others. But I didn't waste time filling in squares that would just get cut away. When the teacher saw what I had done, she gave me a 54, skipping work. I was accused of plagiarism because I had an above-average vocabulary. I got a grade in the end, but I was ticked. It was a group project where nobody did anything. I had to do the whole thing and turn it into a teacher who usually works with the special needs kids. She didn't think preemptive strike was a term an 8th grader should know, so obviously it was plagiarized.